Redemption arcs, a concept as old as literature itself. Maybe. I didn't actually fact check that part. Today, I'm here to determine what makes a redemption arc, and why writers often use them while developing characters. To do this, I've picked 3 different media to analyze. I dare to ask the question, how are redemption arcs used to make dynamic characters more compelling? First on our list of media to analyze, we have Megamind, Mega Teen Unite for the Nintendo Wii, a hit video game that changed our society as we...
Charlie.
What is it?
It's not the video game.
There's a movie? I was supposed to analyze a movie? 1 second while we deal with some technical issues. Now, as I was saying, Megamind follows a blue alien that comes to Earth and gets bullied as a kid. Newsflash, you aren't special. Now, I know what you're thinking. I've just introduced redemption arcs, a nuanced and complex trope that can elevate a character's arc when used properly. And then I throw a barely remembered DreamWorks film from 2010 at you, but stay with me. I know what I'm doing, and I promise there is more to Megamind than one meets the eye. The movie starts off with Megamind falling to his death. So we're off to a great start. He laments about how his life has come to this, and we go to a flashback. We see Megamind fleeing his home planet as a baby. Coincidentally, another alien from another planet has the same idea, which is when we're introduced to Metro Man, Megamind's main rival of the movie. The two travel to Earth the same way, but end up in very different circumstances. Metro Man has the easy life in an upper-class family where his every need is tended to. Meanwhile, Megamind crash lands at a prison yard and it kind of just adopts him like you would a stray cat off the road. They grow up and eventually attend the same elementary school where Metro Man and the other kids bully Megamind. No matter what he does, he's always labeled as the bad guy. So he makes the decision to go against his good nature and be bad because, well, he'll never be seen as anything else. This is how Metro Man and Megamind begin their rivalry. A good versus evil scenario where the bad guy really isn't intimidating at all. Everything's been going smoothly for the past couple of years. They follow a pretty chill routine. Megamind breaks out of prison, he and Metro Man fight, Metro Man wins, and Megamind is sent back to prison. It's simple, it's easy. Why would you ever want it to change? But then it does change. Megamind wins? Metro Man is killed by one of Megamind's inventions, and now he's free to take over the city as he pleases. And he does so, with enthusiasm. But he's not happy. Fighting Metro Man was his purpose in life, or at least he thinks so. And now that he's gone, he doesn't have anything to give him drive anymore. Until, of course, Roxanne Ritchie comes into the picture, a former reporter and rumored lover of Metro Man. Megamind encounters Roxanne while in disguise, so she doesn't recognize it's him. She's incredibly friendly with him, and they have a great time talking to each other. He accidentally inspires her, and she returns that kindness by showing him kindness for the first time. Roxanne offers him a second chance at happiness, and he wants it. And now that Megamind has someone in his life who truly cares for him, aside from Minion, who was really just an enabler for Megamind's bad behavior, Megamind has the opportunity to mature as a person and change himself for the better. But because of society conditioning him to believe he must be the villain, he still craves someone good to come and fight him. So, using his inventions, Megamind creates a machine that will give Metro Man's powers to someone new. Which is how we end up with this fool of a man becoming the actual villain of the movie. This is Hal, the camera guy that works with Roxanne Ritchie and acts like one of those really creepy nerds on the internet that feels entitled to women. When Hal is initially given superpowers by Megamind, he only wants to become a superhero so he can get the affection of Roxanne Ritchie. He believes that the only thing stopping him from dating her is the lack of superpowers. After becoming a superhero, Hal goes after Roxanne, dressed up as Titan, his superhero name, and tries to date her. When she rejects him, he completely flips out and storms off because, unlike Megamind, Hal isn't good-natured and will use his powers for bad. Intentionally.
On purpose.
On purpose! The same night, Roxanne and Megamind go on a date after growing closer to each other. Roxanne finds out Megamind's true identity. We understand that he didn't lie to her to hurt her, since it was the only way she'd give him a chance. But she is completely justified when she tells him off for all the horrible things he's done and breaks up with him. You know she's right, but you also know how much better a person he's gotten because of her kindness. Megamind is left alone in the street at night to think over the things he's done and where to go next. After getting rejected by Roxanne, Hal goes insane and takes over the city while throwing a tantrum. Roxanne and Megamind are forced to join up again together to save the day. They travel to Metro Man's old hideout to try and come up with a plan, only to find out that Metro Man is still alive? Huh? It turns out that just as Megamind had no choice in becoming the bad guy, Metro Man had no choice in becoming the good guy. He's always had to conform to the city's expectations. It's natural that he couldn't stand up to the societal pressure to stay the same person forever. But it also shows that he isn't truly deserving of the title of a hero. Metro Man was just interested in the fame that came with stomping Megamind. Metro Man tells Megamind that good will always rise up to fight evil, and that this may be his time to show he's truly good at heart to the city. But Megamind still doubts himself. Throughout his entire life he's faced rejection and mistreatment because people can only see him as an evil person. So when he has to become the good guy, he gives up and turns himself back into jail. He's internalized the notion that he'll never be good and doesn't deserve a happy ending. But he's still able to make up with Minion after having an argument previously, and decides to do what's right for Roxanne. He faces off against Titan and stops his reign of tyranny, while disguised as Metro Man. This is significant, not only because it intimidates Hal, but also because he wants to give the city the hero they deserve, the hero they want, which is Metro Man. But Roxanne knows it's him, reveals his disguise in front of everyone, and proves that he has changed for the better, and that he deserves to be known as a good guy. Megamind finally saves the day not by pretending to be someone he's not, but through his ingenuity and amazing inventions. Our next character analysis is Matthias Helvar from the novel Six of Crows. Since this book does not center around Nina and Matthias for most of the narrative, I have a lot less to work with than the other sources I'm drawing from, but do not get me wrong, Matthias' redemption arc is still very well done, so I'm still going to talk about it. What I will not be talking about today is Crooked Kingdom, as it can go die. I hate it. In fact, I can basically sum up all of the important plot points in this handy-dandy list I made. Matthias is a former Druskull from Fjorda and one of the main protagonists in the Six of Crows duology. His family was killed by Grisha's soldiers, so he became a Druskull, or witch hunter, in order to avenge them. Under the wing of his mentor and father figure, Commander Jarl Brum, Matthias quickly improves and is sent on a mission to find and capture Grisha, or Riches, in order to take them back to the Ice Court for trial, one of the prisons in Fjorda. One Grisha in the first group that he captured was named Nina Zanik. While traveling to the Ice Court, their ship got caught in a storm and they were the sole survivors because of Nina's magic. Matthias saved her from falling into an ice crevice and they slowly begin to trust one another. Matthias promises Nina that he will get her back to her country safely, known as Ravka. But Nina betrays Matthias' trust by telling a traitor that Matthias is a slaver and he was imprisoned in Hellgate. A year later, the Six of Crows gang and Nina rescued him in order to coerce him to join their mission to break out a scientist from the Ice Court who has created a drug that enhances magical powers of the Grisha. That was a ton of world building in a short amount of time, but we're moving on. Over the course of the book, we see Matthias' internal struggle over the taught hatred towards Grisha versus his relationship with Nina. In reality, Matthias was never ruthless or evil. He was raised in the Fjordan army, training as a Druskull for 3 years. His and Nina's countries are constantly at war due to the violent hate of Grisha and Fjorda, and Ravka being the cultural origin of Grisha. It's essentially a blind hate. Matthias and his grief was taken advantage of to be made into a weapon of war. So when he meets Nina, but then is just as quickly betrayed by her, his hate is reinforced. After After being broken out of prison, however, Nina and his relationship begins to mend as they talk more about things, and Nina brings important realizations to Matthias. During his character arc, everything that Matthias has ever known or believed is put into question as he gets closer to Nina. She makes him seriously question his country's practices with their many, many arguments. I'd honestly say that arguing brings them closer together. Matthias doesn't just give up his job title for Nina, he quite literally has a crisis of faith. Near the end of the book, friendly neighborhood psychopath Kaz Brecker, who is the leader of the Six of Crows, uproots an ancient tree that was a sacred symbol of Matthias' religion in order to escape the ice court. I think that's symbolism. Maybe just a little. Maybe just a tiny bit.
Just a little bit of symbolism.
A little bit. It's a treat. All of this shows the monumental changes that Matthias has to make in order to accept real love, companionship, and community through Nina and the other people in their gang. Matthias' story, at its core, is one of defiance, struggles with self-identity, and finding community. He starts out as a stubborn, jaded, traumatized child soldier who has lost everything and been betrayed by the people he trusts. Matthias is full of hate and anger towards the world from the grief of losing his family, and takes that anger out on Grisha. Fjorda's institutionalized bias and hatred towards Grisha has weaponized the grief of many young people, and Matthias is a product of their abusive system. Matthias begins his journey by being confronted with the notion that the brutalization of Grisha that his country commits is horrifically wrong and not the way he can solve his problems. Nina is able to break through years of conditioning from the military with her determined nature, as well as being open with her trauma with Matthias. The two often butt heads about their opposing cultures and beliefs, which allows for Matthias' narrow worldview to open and grow, as does his relationship with Nina over time. The climax of his character arc comes with the confrontation of Jarl Brummagem. Matthias had thought that his previous mentor had been dead since the shipwreck, but comes face to face with him one last time as he threatens Nina. Seeing his country's true intentions and attitudes towards captured Grisha is the final straw for Matthias as he finally makes up his mind on who he wants to be and who he wants to side with, Nina. I'll read my favorite excerpt from the book. Nina had wronged him, but she'd done it to protect her people. She'd hurt him, but she'd attempted everything in her power to make things right. She'd shown him in 1,000 ways that she was honorable and strong and generous and very human. Maybe more vividly human than anyone he'd ever known. And if she was, then Grisha weren't inherently evil. They were like anyone else, full of potential to do great good and also great harm. To ignore that would make Matthias the monster. Strap in for this one, it's gonna be the longest section of the video. Avatar: The Last Airbender is considered by many to be one of the greatest shows of recent history. It also has one of the greatest redemption arcs in all of media. An angry 16-year-old learning that he doesn't have to be angsty. Guys, I promise it's good, just trust me. Avatar focuses on a universe where some people can bend one of the 4 elements. Except one person, the Avatar, who has the ability to bend all of them. At this point in time, the Fire Nation is winning a war that has spanned the last 100 years in an effort to take over the world. Aang, the most recent Avatar, must defeat Fire Lord Ozai by the end of the summer to save the world. The only problem is that he's a 12-year-old boy who's been stuck in an iceberg for the last 100 years. Don't ask. Prince Zuko is introduced at the beginning of Avatar as an easily irritable, very impulsive, and extremely stubborn teenager. We learn that he has been traveling the world with his uncle for the last 2 years on a wild goose chase trying to find and capture the supposedly dead Avatar in order to restore his honor. What exactly restoring his honor means, we don't know yet. Despite being a very determined and annoying antagonist towards our main group, he isn't all that bad. See, he's very driven, but he's going to keep the war crimes to a minimum. You see this big scar on Zuko's face? I'll let you in on a little secret. His dad did that. Also, it's not a secret. That happens in episode 12 to explain Zuko's backstory. Episode 12, season 1, The Storm, is when Iroh explains to the ship's crew and us why Zuko is the way he is. What happened was, Zuko spoke out of turn during a meeting with his father and other important generals of the Fire Nation. This was seen as an act of dishonor, and therefore Zuko must be punished with an Agni Kai, which is a duel in the Fire Nation. Zuko assumes he will be fighting the general he interrupted and agrees. But as it turns out, since Zuko spoke out of turn in the presence of his father, it is Ozai who is dishonored and has to fight instead. When Zuko realizes this, he begs for mercy and asks for forgiveness. Except his dad is the worst, burns half of his face, and as well banishes him for good measure. Hashtag parent angles. However, Ozai does give Zuko one last chance at redemption. Kind of. If Zuko can find and capture the Avatar, his honor will be restored. Which is how we ended up in the present. So we know that Zuko has a complex motive for finding the Avatar. He isn't doing this out of malice, or selfish reasons honestly. He's just some lost little kid who wants to go back home. Which explains his actions in episode 13, season 1, The Blue Spirit. Another general in the Fire Nation, Zhao, has successfully captured Aang and intends on handing him over to the Fire Lord to be rewarded with fame and glory. This would ruin Zuko's last chance to regain his honor, since he has to be the one to retrieve the Avatar. So he puts on a superhero mask, does some vigilante justice, and breaks Aang out of the prison, like you do. And we get this scene.
We knew each other back then. Do you think we could have been friends too?
So, Zuko's never had friends. Aang basically says, in a hypothetical sense, if I was extending an olive branch to you, would you take it, yes or no? Zuko firebends at him. The dude doesn't trust anyone aside from Iroh, and even then he won't take his advice. Speaking of Iroh, this is a good segue to talk about his and Zuko's relationship. Throughout the first season, Zuko is just straight up not having a good time. He's bitter, angry, and trying to deal with the trauma from his father. No matter what though, Iroh supports and loves Zuko as he tries to lead him on a better path in life, but never forces him like his father would have. Iroh manages to be the only positive influence that Zuko has for a large portion of the show. He is wonderfully kind and a patient mentor that understands what Zuko is going through and does his best to be there for him. Honestly, if it weren't for Iroh, I would not be making this video essay. Zuko's arc in the first season ends with him failing once again to capture the Avatar. He ends up stranded in the North Pole during a blizzard with an unconscious Aang whose soul is currently on leave in the spirit world. Again, don't ask. On to season 2, where things start getting good, including the animation quality. After escaping from the north with Iroh, Zuko and him take a fun little road trip to the Earth Kingdom because guess what? They've committed treason! Yay! While in the Earth Kingdom, Zuko meets a girl his age, and her family are kind enough to give housing and food to Iroh and Zuko one night. Zuko and the girl have a conversation together where they share experiences with the war. This is when Zuko first starts to realize the actual damage that the Fire Nation has done to the rest of the world. We're also introduced to Azula this season, who is Zuko's younger sister. She is the definition of a perfectionist, as well as being cold, ruthless, and sickeningly confident. She is a dark mirror for Zuko, and a comparison of what Zuko could have ended up like without his uncle's love and his good nature. Where Zuko is imperfect, Azula is obsessive to a concerning degree. Eventually, Zuko's ambition and temper get the best of him, and he and Iroh split up as Zuko decides to travel alone. Episode 7, Season 2, Zuko Alone, follows, you guessed it, Zuko when he's alone, and is one of the most important episodes to his arc. He has no friends, no family, and no path to follow in life. Despite being at one of the lowest points, Zuko's strong and empathetic character still shows through with his selfless actions. During his travels, he comes upon a small village that is being controlled by corrupt Earth Kingdom military that abuses their power. He meets a young boy who reminds Zuko of himself and stands up for what's right. But by doing so, he reveals that he's a firebender and a prince from the Fire Nation, and the village turns their back on him despite his good deeds. He leaves the village alone once again. But at least there is still an unwavering good force inside him. Zuko and Iroh are reunited in the next episode after Azula attacks Iroh with lightning, a firebender ability, and Zuko must take care of his injuries. Iroh decides to teach Zuko how to deflect lightning just in case he must use it in the future. Zuko's trauma is starting to cause him problems as he starts to seriously deal with it. But we're not going to focus on that right now because Zuko and Iroh have made it to Ba Sing Se. Despite his growth since Season 1, Zuko's need to prove himself to his father still lingers in his mind. He wants to regain his honor and his place by his father's side, but he has since learned of how the war has negatively affected lives of so many people. Zuko continues to struggle with his inner conflict into the episode Lake Laogai, where he is presented with the choice to either steal Appa, the Avatar's flying bison, in order to draw Aang out to capture him, or do the right thing and let Appa free. In the end, Zuko ends up choosing to do the right thing and then goes into anaphylactic shock because he's allergic to being nice. In reality, Iroh explains that
it was in such conflict with your image of yourself that you are now at war within your own mind and body.
Also, there's this interesting little detail in which the two dragons in Zuko's mind that represent the conflict are voiced by Azula and Iroh. Do you smell character foils, or is it just me? Zuko and Iroh's new life in the city is looking up, as Iroh has been promoted to run his own tea shop and Zuko has overcome his inner conflict. However, things take a nosedive when Azula shows up again and fights Iroh and Zuko. Zuko stays instead of running away while trying to face Azula and is captured. Really thought that one out, didn't you, smart guy? Zuko and Katara end up in a cell together.
You don't know what you're talking about.
I don't? How dare you? You have no idea what this war has put me through. Me personally. The Fire Nation took my mother away from me.
I'm sorry. That's something we have in common.
With the help of the gang, Iroh is able to free Zuko and Katara. Azula interrupts their reunion, however, and tempts Zuko with the promise of being able to return to the Fire Nation as prince again. Zuko ultimately decides to fight alongside Azula, and they defeat the Avatar and take over Ba Sing Se. Season 3! Things are starting to get serious. Zuko returns to the Fire Nation, but is unhappy. He is worried that Aang survived their attack, and that his newfound glory and redemption is only temporary. He also has to face Ozai for the first time in over 2 years, and although his father welcomes Zuko, he is as cold as ever. Zuko goes to visit Iroh in the prison and berates him for being a traitor. He continues to visit Iroh after Azula warns him people may suspect they are plotting together, because he is slowly losing himself in stress and craves the old advice and comfort that Iroh gave him. Let's not worry about that though! It's time for the beach episode! And oh boy, are these kids traumatized! If you expected anything different, clearly you haven't been paying attention. I haven't been able to mention Mei or Ty Lee up until this point, but for context, they're Azula's childhood friends, and Mei is also Zuko's love interest. This confrontational scene on the beach further deepens both Zuko and Azula's characters, as well as their relationship to each other. As Zuko spends more and more time as a prince again, he worries more and more that he made the wrong decision in the Earth Kingdom, and regrets betraying his uncle. He has come so far since the beginning, and is able to realize he can choose his own destiny instead of others telling him what his destiny is. Zuko decides to fully rebel on the Day of Black Sun, the solar eclipse in which the Fire Nation is attacked. Zuko finally stands up for himself against his father, and tells him of his plans to join the Avatar's side to defeat Ozai. Ozai attacks Zuko one last time before he leaves, but he is able to deflect the attack because of Iroh's technique. It's interesting how Zuko never learns how to bend lightning, an offensive attack used to harm people, but instead learns how to absorb it and overcome it, a representation of how he has grown to react to abuse and overcome it instead of resorting to the same habits of his abusers. After the Day of Black Sun, Zuko follows Aang and his friends to the Western Air Temple and admits to the wrong things he's done in order to gain their trust and join their side. Unsurprisingly, they reject him because they do not trust him. You know, he kind of relentlessly hunted them for a while back in Season 1. Eventually, the gang decides to take Zuko as a prisoner to travel with them. But note that Zuko already offered himself up as a prisoner prior to this, so it wasn't like a captor situation, and more of a, hey, let's get a new roommate situation. We also get the apex of his redemption arc's message.
I thought I had lost my honor, and that somehow my father could return it to me. But I know now that no one can give you your honor. It's something you earn for yourself by choosing to do what's right. All I want now is to play my part in ending this war. And I know my destiny is to help you restore balance to the world.
So you know when you last checked, your uncle was in prison for committing treasonous acts against your father, but he actually broke out and was a part of a secret society the entire time, and you go and meet up with that secret society to join forces to defeat the evil Fire Lord, and you're finally able to be reunited with your uncle in a heartfelt moment?
I don't know how I can ever make it up to you, but How can you forgive me so easily? I thought you would be furious with me.
I was never angry with you.
Yeah, I hate it when that happens. So Zuko has stood up for himself against his father, found a new friend group and bonded with them, and made up with his uncle. The only loose string to tie up now is... This is where things get sad. At this point in the series, Azula has lost every meaningful relationship in her life. Her friends betrayed her in order to side with her brother, her mother disappeared years ago, and her father has left her all alone with the Fire Nation in order for him to take over the world and claim all the glory. Her mind is in complete disarray when Zuko finally comes to challenge her for the throne. They face off against each other in the final Agni Kai. This is my favorite fight scene in all of Avatar. Instead of the music being upbeat and intense, it is somber. We are mourning the loss of their kinship as Zuko fights with honor, and Azula slowly loses her mind. These are two hurt children hurting each other because that's what they learned from their father. The fight ends with Azula defeated, chained down to a grate because of Katara's quick thinking. Zuko was able to rely on his friends. Azula has no one left. At the end of the series, Ozai is defeated and Zuko is crowned the new Fire Lord at his coronation as a fully realized person who has healed from his trauma, found a supportive community, and grown. He promises that things will change now that the war is over, and he will do his best to make things right. He is last seen surrounded by his loved ones, enjoying tea and joking around. Zuko's development throughout Avatar is incredibly compelling and complex. His progress isn't linear. He's human, and he struggles, and he makes mistakes. But the important thing is, he did get his happy ending. He made it, and he couldn't have done it without all of the people that helped him along the way. Like he says, I will find the Avatar and reclaim my honor. And he did exactly that, just not in the way he expected. So, what have we learned today? What makes a redemption arc a redemption arc? And what do all of these guys have in common? Throughout each of these characters' stories, there's a common theme of finding redemption with the help of the people you care about most. For Megamind, it's Roxanne. For Mateus, it's Nina and the Crows. And for Zuko, it's his uncle and friends. Each of their stories also heavily employs the use of foils and how comparing characters displays both their flaws and strengths. Take Zuko, for example. His two most prevalent foils are Azula and Iroh. The Dark Mirror contrasts Zuko's light points and makes his redemption all the more meaningful as well as sad. While the light side, Iroh, shows how Iroh's good qualities have an effect on Zuko and how the relationship grows despite their differences. This also happens in Megamind with Metroman and Titan, as well as with Mateus through Nina and Jarl Brom. Another thing about redemption arcs is that you have to get worse before you can get better. These characters feel much more human than their light-hearted Paragon counterparts. The human condition isn't as clean-cut as many stories would like you to believe. It's messy and frustrating and relatable when it shows up in stories. Like how we got locked out of the room today while filming with all of our equipment inside. Redemption arcs make dynamic characters more compelling because we see these characters go through the most change. We see them suffer and struggle and work harder than all of the other characters in the story to fight for their happy ending. My personal takeaway from this is that good writing isn't about making perfect stories or perfect characters. It's about showing growth and giving your audience the ability to look through another person's eyes and see their journey.